Welcome to Inspiring Possible. I'm Christy Pennison, former stuck person turned therapist and dream consultant. Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, uncertain, or just need a little inspiration? Then I want to help you gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to create possibilities and live a life you love. Because folks, life's too short to be miserable. Welcome back to the show. You awesome people, you that show up and listen to this podcast. I really, really appreciate you. But, we're going to talk about something that I think we all are going to be in, are in, currently in, at some point in time. You just can't get away from this. And that is relationships. We are relational creatures. We weren't dropped into the world without some relationships. Now, some of those are healthy, some are not healthy. They're all varied. We all have different experiences. But if you are wanting to make changes and create different possibilities for your life, I think one of the things that you definitely need is these relationships, and good ones, and ones that where you understand people and they can understand you, and you can unlock the potential to have deeper relationships in your life. So I have today a very, very special guest, somebody that I've gotten to know over the past year or two, and she is an expert on this relationship thing. So I asked her to come join us today to talk a little bit about how to unlock maybe another level in your relationships to help you not only find more happiness and wholeness and feel goodness, however you want to say this, and satisfaction in your relationships, but also that you can use these relationships to then help you create different possibilities for your life. So welcome, Laurel Roberts-Meese. Is that it right, Laurel?
Meese.
Meese.
Yeah.
My gosh. Laurel, listen, I've known Laurel for a while and I've never known how to pronounce this last name. And I even practiced it. Y'all know this with me and last names, those that have you listen, and I still mess it up. Sorry, Laurel.
That's
Meese.
okay. That's okay.
Thank you for correcting me, though. I appreciate it. So tell me a little bit about, when did you become really more intrigued on how to understand people more, or really this relationship dynamic? And I know for those that are listening, Laurel is also a therapist. Okay. So, I know this understanding people is kind of part of who we are, right, Laurel?
Yeah.
But what made you say, okay, I really want to understand how to just unlock maybe a deeper level in the relationships that I have?
Yeah. Well, I think we all are just born with a curiosity around, why are other people doing the things that they are doing, right? Because you can observe them and say, I would not do that in that scenario, but that person is, and that person either thinks that's a good decision, or, maybe it is a good decision for them. And just that kind of confusion around, why are other people different than me? This is a very early stage of development. We're talking like kindergarten or grade school. Why are other people different than me? So I can't pinpoint a moment that I, really was like, I have to understand other people. I have to understand relationships. I think it's always there. Certainly when I went to my first therapy session, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense to me. But as far as what we're talking about today and how to explore relationships, how to strengthen them, how to unlock the next level in relationships, and I would add often, largely your relationship to yourself, we need to include when we talk about relationships. Something really just clicked and made sense for me when I was introduced in high school to the Enneagram. And so that's what we're going to, in high school. So it's been over 20 years that I have been studying and using the Enneagram, and I'm really passionate about it. I'm not too serious about it. Like I can have fun with it, but, but using this as a system to understand myself and understand people around me, I feel has brought me so much joy and such depth and strength of relationships, and also a way to understand conflict, because there are no relationships without conflict. So,
What?
like,
You're telling me we can't have just these peaceful, never have a conflict relationship?
no, no. And
Mm.
actually, as a therapist, the couples that I see that are trying to avoid conflict at all cost are some of the saddest and most distant relationships, where they just miss each other so much, or they're building up resentment, all in the name of avoiding conflict, and then it blows at some point, right? So conflict is not inherently bad. There is healthy conflict. And using the Enneagram, I've really been able to explore and understand, what is this healthy conflict and what do we do with it?
Okay. Yeah, and you know what? I can think about this. Maybe I've never put this two things together, but people, you're right. They when they are conflict avoidant, they never have a chance to actually speak and express what they're feeling a lot of
Yeah.
times because they're trying to avoid having confrontation. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's so much inwardness that
Yes.
happens. And then also, like you said, disconnect
Yeah.
when really what they're wanting is
Yeah.
connection, but conflict would almost have to occur for
Yes.
you to get back to that piece of
Yeah.
connection. And so that's, I
Mm-hmm.
never, it's interesting how you put that. I don't know why it just never clicked in my head that way,
Yeah.
but it's something we don't always think about.
Yeah. And I think we have a loneliness epidemic right now. Like, so many people, and I would say especially men, are quite lonely. There aren't a lot of models for like deep, intimate friendship for men. And when we're lonely and when we're doing whatever we can to maintain relationship, it's not about deepening and strengthening, it's just about maintaining. And
Mm.
that's not how you unlock next level relationships. You unlock next level relationships by having loving but difficult conversations, and by sharing feelings, by being appropriately vulnerable at the right time and place with the right people.
Yeah, well, and if so people are listening, they're like, "You know what, Laurel, you just hit the nail on the head," because I really do see people struggling for connection, and I don't know if it is because and I do agree with you. I can see even men because they're not always we're not always taught to have those deeper relationships, right?
Yeah.
Like I think women even struggle with this, but I find that
Hmm.
they sometimes are like raised to lean on relationships a little
Hmm.
bit more or in different ways. I
Or to
see men
be
and
of
women.
service, or to be a
Yes.
caretaker and nurturer, and that is the only role. And when you are just caretaking and nurturing, you don't get your own needs met.
Well, and let's talk about that. We have a lot of things we can unpack here, okay? Because I'm thinking about,
Yeah.
yes, that is true. And then there's
Hmm.
resentment there if they're always the caregiver and then
Yeah.
needs are not getting met. Or maybe there's a conflict with the relationship with yourself and you might not think you're deserving of getting your
Hmm.
needs met. So we can unpack a whole bunch of different things there. Well, let's talk about maybe the benefits of trying to find ways to create deeper relationships in our
Hmm.
lives. What are the benefits? And then how would people go about doing that?
Well, the benefits are unlimited, but I will say you can't have hundreds of deep relationships. That's just not possible. You and your, 500 best friends, that's not a thing. Like, there is a capacity issue. There's only so many hours in the day. Um, but
So
but
much
why?
emotional bandwidth. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, as particularly for introverts, that like we're not necessarily shy, but like we need alone time to recharge, versus extroverts that have more social bandwidth, and that's just organic and built in, and it's not bad to be an introvert. You're just going to have less social energy. But when you have deeper relationships, in times of joy, that joy is elevated by like sharing it and experiencing it with others. It's why we have celebrations like weddings and graduations and birthday parties, that we can mark these life events in community. And humans have always existed in community. And when you feel very seen, heard, and understood, deeply understood by the people that you're celebrating with, your joy is elevated. And then on the other side of that, when we go through really difficult periods, when we are grieving, or we get laid off, or we're in a difficult phase of parenting, or whatever it is, we have people we can lean on and support, that they know, like, and understand us, and we feel safe to be vulnerable and receive that support. it just strengthens everything. It strengthens your joy and it gives you more resilience in difficult times. So there's zero downsides to having really deep, wonderful relationships.
Right. Well, but I loved how you paint that picture because, when we're about to take this journey, or y'all going to take this journey with us as Laurel's about to unlock the secrets to how we can have these deeper relationships,
Hmm.
right? But like, it is important to know how this can actually benefit your life, and it doesn't happen overnight.
No.
You just don't. I'm still learning people. I'm still learning myself. I haven't figured this out, and I'll probably take my whole lifetime, and I could probably take 5 lifetimes to and
Hmm.
still not figure this out completely. But I do see, especially since even I think the pandemic magnified this, right, in a lot of ways, even though we've been through that and came out on the other side, is that we need relationships, and the quality of your relationships, I do believe, determines the quality of your life, like you're alluding
Hmm.
to with these
Hmm.
benefits of not only being able to have people to share in the journey with, to celebrate with you in those
Hmm.
moments of joy, but also to walk with you in those harder times. So,
Hmm.
what would you say is the first step? Because we're not all taught or modeled healthy
Hmm.
relationships and how to do this deeper level. So,
Hmm.
where do you start with just suggesting where people should put their mindset at on trying to do this relationship thing at a deeper level?
Yeah. I mean, it so depends on the individual. And I actually kind of want to get into the Enneagram a little bit because your
Let's do it.
Enneagram type determines where you should start with those
Okay.
relationships. Okay. So, there are so many personality typology systems out there, right? And people listening, they probably already have one that they really like. Some people like Myers-Briggs, or some people like numerology, some people like astrology, some people like the big five. Like there are endless Harry Potter houses, right? That's a typology system
Yeah.
around personality, and some of them are evidence-based, some of them are not. I think Enneagram kind of falls somewhere in the middle. What I love about it is that it's really a map for each person to be the best version of themselves and have the deepest relationships with others. So the basic principle here is that there are 9 types. So just like with computers, we have Macs and PCs, and I guess there's like a third type, Linux. Like I don't know. I can do basic things
Anywhere
on a
world. I
computer,
don't know.
but for most of us out there, there's Mac and PC, right? Now, if you imagine that humans have different operating systems like Mac and PC, but there are 9 of them because there's so many, billions of people, we got to have more than 2 operating systems,
Right.
right? So there are 9 operating systems, and none of them are good or bad. Like your type is just neutral, and it's based around your core fear and your core desire. And these are shaped by early life experiences. So I'm not going to get into too many comparisons with astrology, but my only beef with astrology is that it's based on the moment you were born in terms of your personality, and then it doesn't change at any point based on lived experiences. And I know astrology is very meaningful to some people. I'm not going to take that away. These systems can exist very peacefully and actually support each other if you like astrology. But what I like about the Enneagram is that it is very much about what you experienced after you were born and how that shaped your fears and desires. So you already were talking about some experiences that are common among women, which are, either being a caretaker and nurturer and then building up resentment because your own needs aren't being met, or making yourself really small and kind of forgetting yourself and your needs. And those are 2 of the 9 types, type 2 and type 9, right? And this is based on messages that were given, based on traumatic experiences, or just early relationships with our caregivers, with our siblings, with teachers, with people that are shaping our little impressionable small selves. So when you ask this question of like, how do you go about building deep relationships? Well, first you got to do your own work. You got to know yourself, and you got to know where your areas for growth are. So I'll briefly go over the 9 types in a second, but there are no bad types. There's only healthy and unhealthy expressions and average expressions of each type. And your job as a human being is to just try and be the best version of your type that you can be. And to know where some of your growth areas are, and to use your strengths as much as you can to take care of yourself and to build those relationships.
I love that. I'm ready to dive in. I'm writing
Yeah,
notes over here, Laurel,
let's do
okay?
it.
Because you're
Okay.
explaining it, and I've heard of this before, and I've heard of this, I even know what my number
Hmm.
is, okay? But,
Hmm.
I think you're explaining it in a way that I've never heard before, so I'm really excited about
Mm,
this,
yeah.
so go ahead.
Yeah. Well,
Number
I
1.
think
No, I'm
the
just kidding.
biggest mistake number, we know a number one. We share a friend that is a number one.
Yeah.
The biggest mistake that people make with the Enneagram is using determining someone's type or your own type based on behavior. I want to stress again
Mm.
that this is based on motivation. Right? This
Ooh,
is what
okay.
motivates you in life. So there can be 9 people sitting at the same table having the same conversation. They have 9 different motivations for being at that table and having that conversation. Right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So let's get into it.
I
I'm
love that you
actually,
said that because I think
yeah.
sometimes I've heard people get into this and they will type someone, right, based off
Yeah.
behavior. And
Mm-hmm.
they say, oh, well, these behavioral characteristics, and I've been at fault for doing this too, like seem to match up with this type. But what you're saying is it's really based off of that core motivation,
Mm-hmm.
that core, and also core fears that may have developed through lived experience
Yeah.
that
Totally.
shapes how we show up in the world and our kind
Yeah.
of type or the way that we operate.
Absolutely. It's all about lived experience, which makes so much sense to me as a therapist, right?
Yes.
Like I hear
Yes.
about something that happened to someone in kindergarten. I'm like, well, that's why you're, deeply afraid that you're not lovable, or that's why you're afraid of, right? It's just like
Right.
no, no behavior, no matter how crazy it seems, is illogical when you understand their motivation.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. I feel like you need to repeat that.
No
No
behavior
behavior.
is as crazy as it seems once you understand the motivation.
Yes. Okay.
Mhm.
Preach. Go ahead. Preach, Laurel. All right.
Okay.
I'm writing that
Okay.
down, but I think it's important for
Yeah.
people to know because, you know, you may see certain behaviors that you see somebody else taking, and you're like, that makes no sense to me
Mhm.
why they would ever behave in that way. That is illogical. It doesn't make sense. And in fact, it's downright not good.
Mhm.
And like you said, if you understand someone's story, someone's lived experience, someone's motivation, it starts to make a little bit of sense of
Yeah.
why they act like that. Like Laurel, I have an obsession with watching Netflix documentaries on like kind of cult situations, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's fascinating to me. But it's the same thing, right? You understand somebody's lived experience, what then may align them
Yeah.
to certain belief systems, and then the way their motivation is coming out through this shared community
Yep.
that for some might be like, no, why would they ever do that? But to the person that's had that lived experience and then is a part of that community, it makes perfect sense, you know?
Yep.
I know that's a really
Absolutely.
far, like, string that I just drew, but
I think it's easy for people who've not been in high demand religious or social groups like cults to say, oh, why would anyone do that? But then when you
yeah.
understand, if someone is deeply, deeply driven by wanting to belong, or to feel a sense of safety, or to have a set of rules and customs to follow, I think it would be quite easy
Or even
to.
it's all they've ever known,
Yes. Oh,
they've
yeah.
never
If you're
known
born
anything
into it.
different. Yeah. Mhm.
Totally. Totally. Okay. So let's go through the 9 types. I'm going to be very brief because
Okay.
this is a very complex systems. Like people, and we all have a little bit of every type in us. We just have we have like a predominant type, and then we have a wing. But sometimes when we're having a really rough day, we're going to be a little bit more like a type that's like far away from our type. That's okay,
Mhm.
right? Think of it as like you have your main house and then you have your vacation house. But you can like visit other people's houses sometimes.
Yeah.
Right?
I love
Okay.
that. I love that
All
analogy.
right. So type 1, they're called the reformer. These are people, their big motivation in life is to be good and to be just and right. And their big fear is that they are corrupt or bad. And these are people that are often doing incredible social justice work. They're very detail oriented. They can have a black and white sense of right and wrong. They can sometimes be a little inflexible, but they are fighting the good fight. They truly want to make things better for everyone. So you see a lot of ones in community organizing, in social justice, in law, they're everywhere out in the world. And they truly are trying to do good work. Now, a really healthy one would be able to rein in the frustration and anger and see others' perspectives. And a very unhealthy one would be like a zealot and inflexible, very black and white, angry, lashing out, and kind of hypocritical at times.
Okay.
So that's a 1. And we're just doing these in numerical order. Again, there's no good or bad types, just healthy, average, and unhealthy. And I should also say I don't like Enneagram tests because they measure behavior. So as I'm going through these, if any of these feel like, ooh, that's a little close to home, that feels uncomfortable to hear, that's a sign it might be your type. And then just read up on it and don't take a test because the tests are not very reliable. And they tend to tell women that they are 2s, even if they are any of the other types on the Enneagram, because 2 is a very socially acceptable type for a woman. Women are often socialized to be very nurturing, to take care of others, to be very attuned, very empathic and warm. And these are great things. But on the other side of that, a 2, their primary motivation is to be loved and to be needed. And their deep fear is that they are unlovable. So a lot of their behavior of taking care of others is because they want to be loved in return. So when they spend all their time and energy caring for others, if they don't get that in return, if they are not feeling loved, they're going to be resentful and they can also lash out. A healthy 2 is someone who takes care of their own needs, who's in touch with what they need and does it before caring for others. And an unhealthy 2 is just a martyr who is, beyond burnt out and resentful.
Okay.
Yeah. Type 3, this is the achiever, and they are very motivated by being successful and admired. They can really adapt to whatever a situation needs of them. They are often pretty ambitious. They can be competitive, not always with others, it's often with themselves. And they are often, superstars at work. They can be highly focused on success, advancement. Sometimes it looks like greed and vanity, like looking to just make a ton of money or to be the hottest person on the treadmill at the gym or to have the most attractive partner or the big fancy house. When we see a 3 that's really focused on those things, as a therapist, I would invite them to also consider some internal markers of success and kind of connecting with things that have deeper meaning and relationships with meaning. A really healthy 3 would be not quite as self-involved, like really connected to others, very aware of their feelings. And a very unhealthy 3 would just be completely fixated on really ambitious goals at the cost of relationships, including relationship to self.
And their core fear is
Oh, their core fear is failure.
failure. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought, but I was
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure core
Mm-hmm.
fear, failure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is the
Ty-
opposite again of the achievement piece. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Type 4 is the most complex type. Their core desire is to be unique and to be authentic and to be understood. And their core fear is that they are defective and different and misunderstood and the same as everyone. They do not want to be the same. These are, naturally very artistic, expressive, emotionally attuned people. A lot of artists, songwriters, people that are very creative, and also just creative thinkers that aren't necessarily artists. Unhealthy fours can be really self-involved and just kind of always down in the muck and mire of their feelings and the negative feelings, not necessarily like the big happy feelings, but just kind of always down in this like, the tortured poet, right? And
Okay.
then a very healthy four would be self-aware and able to express things that are personal in a universally understood way, and also not as self-involved, that they're connecting to others and being present to others' emotional experiences as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The five, I have a lot of fives in my life. I'm lucky. Fives are probably the most introverted type. They are known as the investigator. And
Okay. I have a
they,
few fives in my life,
uh-huh, uh-huh,
a lot of
uh-huh,
sixes actually is what I have, but
uh-huh,
and some more and a lot of ones. Okay, go
uh-huh.
ahead.
Yeah. Fives are, very kind of pragmatic, data driven, and practical. These are great researchers, statisticians, people that want to take apart the toaster and really know how it works.
I love that
they're,
analogy.
yeah,
These are the
they're,
take about the toaster people, okay?
yeah. And they are experts at like niching down into their field. Like if you want someone that knows the mating habits of that particular fruit fly, it's a five that's going to know it, right? A five that wrote a thesis on it. Their core desire is to protect their resources. These are kind of, and to acquire knowledge and resources. Resources are time, energy, and money, right? So I have a five in my life that I like to tease that she's a little dragon, that she's just always protecting her time, energy, and money. And, but also, this is the person I go to when I need to strategize around something, when I need like a truly neutral perspective. So the core fear is being depleted, and the core desire is to gain knowledge and to have enough, right?
Yeah. I do
Very
love
help.
fives because I just can't deep
Yes.
dive like I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of the fives in my life can, and I really appreciate their ability to find energy
Yeah.
and really dive in deep.
Yeah. Yeah. That is where they find their energy. That's a good observation.
Mhm.
Um, you know, if at this same five in my life, if I want to know anything about cryptocurrency, go to her because she knows
Yeah.
everything. Do I have the time or patience to research cryptocurrency? No.
But you
Um,
appreciate somebody doing that for you. So if you
yeah,
need
oh,
to be
yeah.
educated on it, they'll tell you all the things.
Yeah. And if you're trying to connect with a five, just get them talking about their niche interests because they know everything about their niche interest and they love to talk about it. Um, so that's the five. Unhealthy five would be completely disconnected from most of the world and just, that little dragon in a cave hoarding treasure. And a healthy five would get out there, be a little more socially connected, recognize that like they do have enough and that they can be a little more generous with their resources and in
Okay.
the spirit of building relationships. Yeah. A six, these are the loyalists. They they're anxious folk. They are anxious folks. But this anxiety, again, it makes sense, right? They are very loyal. They're very protective of their people, their community. They have an interesting relationship with authority. They, at the same time, really respect authority, but they don't necessarily trust it. They're watching to make sure that people in positions of authority are behaving properly and really have the interest of the people under their purview at heart. So these people make great friends. They often have a great sense of humor. And a healthy six would be someone that is managing their anxiety, that is able to have a more comfortable relationship with authority, and maybe even step into a position of authority themselves. I don't want to unilaterally say that sixes are followers. They're not. They're more joiners because they
Mm.
feel safety in community. And sixes, because they are so loyal and so dedicated to their community, they can actually be great leaders. They just need to master that anxiety that they have about actually assuming the role themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? An unhealthy six is someone who's highly distrustful and is kind of like paranoid, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
about having any freedom or autonomy or just resources taken away. But the real fear for sixes is being disconnected, being
Mm.
being unable to cope, being unable to being disconnected from others, not having any security. I should rephrase that. The primary motivation is security, and the
Yeah.
fear is not being secure. And they
Yeah.
often go about that through community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sevens are the life of the party, Christy.
I know a seven.
They are very fun. They are high energy, extroverted, interested in everything. They want to taste every dish at the buffet of life. They are haunted by FOMO because there's just so much to experience in life, and we don't want to miss any of it, right? The core desire is to be content. This is not a peaceful contentment. This is a absence of pain, right? To be free from pain, free from discomfort. And often the pursuit of that is like, yeah, I want to take a kickboxing class, and yeah, I want to try that, and I'm going to dye my hair purple, and there's just like, they're so willing to try things, but it's often an effort to avoid feeling uncomfortable things. The fear is of being deprived and in pain and without any support or resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people that have experienced a lot of pain, people that have had very tough times, it makes sense to want to avoid those feelings. We can never completely know what a celebrity is, but I would suspect that Robin Williams was a seven, right? That high energy, just, funny as all get out. And also really didn't know what to do in the face of pain, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
And their
Uh,
core longing is or
well,
desire.
contentment, but
Contentment. Okay, that's
contentment
contentment.
is to be free from pain and suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and it looks like just wanting constant stimulation.
Mm-hmm.
A very unhealthy seven would be kind of manically avoiding any and all feelings that aren't positive. And a healthy seven would be able to tolerate the natural ups and downs of life without resorting to frantic um, numbing and distraction and stimulation to avoid discomfort.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Eight. Eight is one of the more assertive types. Eight's primary motivation, they're called the challenger. Their primary motivation is to maintain their autonomy. They are in control of themselves no matter what. And their fear is losing control, losing autonomy. Not control as in they need to control everything around them, but control of themselves and their person and their life, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So yeah, so an eight, they are often in positions of authority because they don't want someone else to be an authority over them. And when they are very healthy, they are bold leaders who can, make tough decisions and are also nurturing and really protecting the people that they are leading, making choices that are in the interest of people that have entrusted them with leadership. And a very unhealthy eight would be like a just dominating power broker who just wants to show off their power and kind of crush the people under them because they can, right? So you can use that power for good, or you can use that power for bad. And 8s kind of run the gamut. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's 8. And then the last one here, I feel bad we always leave 9s for last
I know,
because they're
last
so
but not
sweet.
least, our
Definitely
favorite
not least. I
9s,
know,
okay?
9s are so sweet. We see a lot of 9s showing up in therapy too.
Mhm.
Um, 9s are the peacemakers. It's really interesting that 8 and 9 are right next to each other because they're so
I
very
know.
different.
We have the one that's, like, more of the challenger, the
Yeah.
disruptor, I would
Yeah.
say, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And then you
Yeah.
have the and disruptor sometimes in a good way, like,
Yeah.
here comes this situation, I'm gonna challenge it a little bit and
Yeah.
disrupt maybe what people are thinking, which is that conflict that can
Mhm.
then come actually to some really positive
Yeah.
outcomes, but, yeah, the 9s are just trying to make sure that everybody's okay and
Yeah.
happy.
Well, and what's
Mhm.
very interesting, an interesting juxtaposition with 8 and 9 is that 8s actually build connection through conflict. They kind of want to know that you can take a push and that you'll give as good as you get, and then they
Mhm.
respect you if they know that you
Yeah.
can take it.
Yeah.
Whereas 9s are like, what if we all just got along? You know?
Well, and Laurel, I
Yeah.
think about this. I actually had a childhood friend that I've been friends with my whole life. And I used to always wonder why she was just so direct about things. And
Mm.
sometimes not even like there would be thought process. I'm like, did you think about how that would resonate or
Mm.
whatever? She would just say it. And I didn't know. I'd sometimes get
Yeah.
offended. And it wasn't until adulthood that we were talking about this one day. And she's like, yeah, I'm an 8. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh.
It makes so much sense to me now. I've been over here offended for half of our relationship,
Yeah.
okay? And then now I realize that
Yeah.
it's really just a part of who you are, and I just have to push back on it, like you said,
Mhm.
if there's something that I don't like, because they really do the 8s in my
Yeah.
life, they really do have a core thing to too. They don't want people to they want to feel loved and
Yes.
connected and whatever. They're just more
Yeah.
assertive in a lot of their
Yeah.
communication. And
Yeah.
so I had to realize that a lot of times their intention was not
Mhm.
to, you know,
Right.
make me feel a certain way. It was just the way that they
Yeah.
communicate. Mhm.
Yeah, and an area of growth for 8s is that soft startup.
Yeah.
I would say 8s often struggle to recognize that there are 8 other operating systems, and not
Yeah.
everyone builds closeness through conflict, and not everyone can be as direct and blunt, and not everyone appreciates it the way that they do. And so that soft startup of like, "Hey, I really wanted to talk about XYZ. Are you open to that?" Instead of like, "What's wrong with XYZ?" You know? Right? So,
Uh,
so someone that is an
anyways, back to our
expert.
peacemaker.
Yeah, back to our
Yeah.
peacemakers. See, we're taking up the peacemaker
I'm
space with the
sorry,
8.
peacemaker.
I know. So, peacemakers type 9, their core motivation is to be at peace. They want calm, they want tranquility, not in the same way the 7 does. The 9 can actually tolerate some discomfort.
Mhm.
And actually, they often tolerate quite a bit of discomfort in the name of peace.
Yeah. Maybe more than they probably should at
Should.
sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And putting their own needs aside, and and just for the sake of the group, and for often for the family of origin. And their core desire is peace, and their core fear is being disconnected, like being alone, being stranded, you know?
Mm.
And this, when I talk about this, 9s listening are probably like, "Ooh, that cuts real deep. That goes back to childhood, feeling alone, feeling disconnected," and that their whole approach to life after leaving the family home is about, how do I get connected? But
Mm.
also, when you avoid conflict, you sometimes avoid the deepening that creates the connection you crave so much, right? 9s are great teammates. They're actually very good mediators. They can handle other people's conflict. They just don't want conflict with themselves, right?
Yeah. So
So,
I can help y'all
yeah.
resolve this and get to
Yes.
a,
Uh-huh.
peaceful situation. I just don't
Mhm.
want to be the one that feels like if I say something, then it's going to
Yeah.
maybe isolate me from people that are
Yeah.
important to me.
Yeah. One of the core
Mm.
messages that the 9s somehow absorbed when they were young is that their needs are a problem. And that
Mm.
in order to be at peace, they need to not have needs. They need to not take up space. They need to just kind of go with the flow. And that is not a way to have healthy relationships, to have
Yeah.
no needs.
Mhm.
That's not good.
Yeah.
Um, 2 and 9 sometimes get confused because they're both very focused on the needs of others. But 2, there's kind of like that ego, like, I need to be loved. I need. And 9 is genuinely not aware of their needs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, gentle listener, I've been watching Bridgerton lately. You know, dear gentle reader, um,
Mm-hmm.
if you are listening and one of these numbers resonate with you and hit a
Mm-hmm.
chord, definitely like Laurel said, go read some more about it because I will say that sometimes people can deep dive and miss in my mind, I've seen people really weaponize this. I
Oh,
hate to say it,
yeah.
Laurel.
Mm-hmm.
They've
Mm-hmm.
weaponized it, but it's not good. This is about understanding, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding yourself, understanding people around you. And really what we're talking about today is deepening those relationships. So
Yeah.
with that just kind of understanding of the Enneagram, did I say
Mm-hmm.
it right? I always feel like
Mm.
I say it wrong in my head.
Enneagram. Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
it what that thing that we
Uh-huh.
talking about, go look it up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how would you say I guess it depends on each person
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
their type, or their operating system will help
Mm-hmm.
them build deeper connections.
Yeah.
But how would you tell people where should people go from here now that they kind of maybe have heard a little bit of something that resonates with them? They want to dive a little bit deeper into is
Mm-hmm.
that me?
Yeah.
What would be the next step you'd tell them about when they understand how to have those deeper connections?
Yeah. Well, first, you always start with yourself when using this system, and you cannot tell someone else what they are. Now, there are people in your life you probably know very well, but you would want to, be like, hey, have you heard of this thing? What do you think? Do you have a sense of what your type is? Right. Um, I know the story I always tell is that I did the thing you're not supposed to do, which I guessed someone's type. The day I met my fiance, I was like, that is the fiviest five I've ever seen. And didn't approach with a lot of intensity or assertiveness, just kind of like, okay, let's get this person talking about their interests and like, let's kind of let them come to me. And
Mhm.
my fiance has since said that they felt so understood and so like safe because I just had this framework. And, we've been together over 7 years now, and using the Enneagram has helped us so much in depersonalizing our differences. You
Ooh,
know,
I like that. Yeah.
yeah, that's really how you should use it. Depersonalizing differences, not saying like, I once gave a chat or a lecture about the Enneagram to a bunch of people at a conference, and I had someone who self-identified as an 8 say, well, I think we should just tell 4s to stop being so sensitive. And I'm like, no, you depersonalize it because someone else having a different operating
Mm,
system is not a problem. It's the
yeah.
disconnect in your understanding about how different their operating system is that is the problem,
Well, and I
right?
love how you just said that because I'll be honest with you, and I don't know, I mean, Laurel, it sounds like you got introduced to this in high school, so kind of
Mm-hmm.
like early on the life
Yeah.
journey. Um, but I honestly grew up a lot thinking that people, this is going to sound crazy because I know we're all different, but that people thought like me because you just
Mm-hmm.
live in your own world, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, everybody thinks like this, right? Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
how people show up. I mean, I'm seeing some differences about how
Yeah.
people operate, but like, I never understood until I got into the role of really learning to lean into people and understand how people operated and understand lived experiences and hearing
Yep.
stories. I realized, oh my gosh, we all think so differently. We all operate so differently. We all have different internal worlds that are moving,
Yep.
within. And there's different ways that we're seeing the world very differently and operating in the world. And I think that's where that piece of then realizing, wait, okay, we're all different, even with a type, you know, you have so many nuances of that. It's not like
Mhm.
just because you're, a 1 or a 5 that this is gonna be you all day. Like you said, there's different types in it, but this really helps, I guess, like you said, the more you understand people, then the more you can help not only meet their I hate to say that, but like meet their needs,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then they can understand what your needs are and they can
Mhm.
help meet those as well. And then also they can help address those fears
Yeah.
that tend to
Mhm.
come up and creep up because
Mhm.
I can think about since we've done this in my workplace, right? And I'm still learning more and more every day. But the more I'm like, oh, that person is not trying to undermine me
No.
or whatever. They just need more reassurance or they need
Yeah.
this. Or this person is not acting this way out of malintent. It's just that this is what they may need to help them
Mhm.
understand and with me being how I am, I'm like, let's jump off this cliff. Everybody should come with me. It'll be fun. And, and then I'm realizing over here,
Mhm.
like, okay, you might need to give more information. You might need to slow down. You may need to have this conversation, or even like for some people, have more of that connective piece
Mhm.
to where you're
Mhm.
building that relationship so that when you're asking them to jump off this very scary place with you, that they have that built trust and
Yeah.
it didn't just happen because you imagine that you should feel
Yeah.
this way automatically, So
Yeah. I'm just imagining you taking your and I've never met your team, but I'm imagining you
yeah.
taking your team ziplining or something. And like you do not need to convince the 7s or the 8s really, or
Mhm.
maybe the 3s to zipline. Like they'll do it. They're just like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
game. And if the 6s see everyone doing it, they'll probably do it. But like the 5s, they might need to understand how the safety works and like what is the velocity you'll be at. And then the 4 is like, what's the emotional experience of this ziplining going to be, right? Like it's just everyone is doing the same thing, but their internal
And then I can
experience
think
of
my
it's going to
one
be so.
friends are gonna wanna know, like, the kind of itinerary of,
Yes.
"Hey,
Yes.
we're gonna, like, do this, and then we're gonna do this," you
Mm-hmm.
know? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's so
Mm-hmm.
funny.
Mm-hmm.
But when
Yeah.
you know people with your need, you don't come at it from a place of judgment. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Where we can say,
absolutely.
"Why? Oh gosh,
Yeah.
no, they need that." You come from a place of understanding, and then you actually come from a place of less, um, frustration with things. You're just like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm sorry, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even think about that," So
A couple that is comprised of types that have some common issues. Like I'm going to pick on a couple that is a 2 and a 5, right? A 2 needs to feel loved. They need to know that they're lovable. They as much as they caretake others, they also have a lot of need there. And if they are paired with a 5, someone who is hoarding resources and needs a ton of alone time, there's going to be a lot of conflict there. The 2 is going to feel neglected, the 2 is going to feel unloved, and the 5 is like, what are you talking about? I just need a lot of alone time. It's not about you, right?
mhm.
Neither one of them is wrong, but it's where their needs are conflicting. And if they can understand, like, oh, okay, neither one of us is wrong here. We have to figure out a way that both of us can get our needs met. And that puts people in a place of like mutually problem solving rather than just protecting what they need or being upset about it.
Ooh, I love that. Mutual
Mhm.
problem solving. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think when you have that ability to say, let's mutually problem solve this, understand each other, and come to some agreements about what's needed, or even like we were talking about before, conflict,
Mhm.
how are
Mhm.
we gonna address conflict, and what are the
Yeah.
ways that really both of us will feel good about if we need to,
Mhm.
we conflict about something that this is how we can resolve it in a way that feels
Mhm.
good for both of us without causing a lot of harm or, you
Yeah.
know, yeah, harm.
Some people
That's what I'm
even
thinking about.
schedule their conflict. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but there are some types that like they need some prep. It's like, hey,
Mhm.
I'm really upset about how that conversation went down yesterday. I would really like to talk about it. When is a good time?
Yeah.
That for some types, beautiful, perfect.
Mhm.
For some types, they would be like, right now. we need to talk about it right now, right?
You want time? Why you need some
Y-
time? Come on
yeah.
now. What you got to think about?
Yeah.
We having conversation right now verbally. What you got to think
Yeah.
about?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Oh, you're so
So
right.
if you know someone's type, then you can respond to them differently. Respond to them in a way that they're more likely to hear and feel understood. And
Mhm.
that's the secret to unlocking next level relationships. When people feel understood and when there's reciprocity, you're going to have magical relationships.
It's so true. And
Mm-hmm.
nobody, guys, I don't know about y'all listening. I mean, nobody taught me really when I was growing up how to understand people.
I know.
And I feel like this is one of those, like you said, typologies or frameworks to
Mm-hmm.
just have a deeper understanding of the people in our lives.
Yeah.
And I love how you said it's not that we're trying to go around putting labels on people based off behaviors and everything like that. It's really from a place of how can I just depersonalize some of these things that I'm seeing and meet it with an understanding, because I know you've experienced this, Laurel, with being in this profession. It is something magical when somebody feels seen,
Mm-hmm.
heard, and understood. It
Yeah.
unlocks this like gate within them where
Yeah.
so much positive change can happen, where they can be more courageous in life to take those risks, to do things out of their comfort zone. And then, like you said, in relationships, when you see people that, I mean, not that everything's perfect all the time, right? I mean, Laurel, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I know you've done a lot of couples therapy. Have you met just perfect couples?
Never.
Is there a perfect couple?
No.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
I've met people that are very well suited to each other and
Yeah.
don't have to do as much creative problem solving and have a lot of fun together, but there are no perfect
N-
couples. There are no
No
couples without
perfect.
conflict. There's no,
Right.
no. Yeah.
And you're right. And so it requires, if we really want to deepen and I'm just thinking about this out loud because I'm a verbal processor, but you know, if we really want to deepen these relationships, which I think most people would say, yes, sign me up for a
Mm-hmm.
relationship that's deeper, where I
Mm-hmm.
feel seen, heard, understood, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel there's trust, there's vulnerability, there's reciprocity there. I haven't met one person that says, "No, I don't want that," okay?
Mm-hmm.
But the more we can understand each other, then the more it allows for those spaces for that to develop and for us to have more, like we'll go back full circle to what we talked about. What are the benefits of this?
Mm-hmm.
Being able
Mm-hmm.
to share in joy, being able to walk through hard places with
Mm-hmm.
somebody who sees you and knows
Mm-hmm.
you, and I mean, to be known is a pretty incredible thing.
It's profound. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Laurel, if
And to
people
know
go ahead.
yourself. To know
Yes.
yourself is profound.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're not taught. I mean, did you have a class in high school, How to Know Thyself?
No.
Maybe you did because they did in your no, you didn't have that class?
No. Oh, I didn't learn the Enneagram in school. It was outside of
Okay,
school.
okay.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
outside of school, yeah.
Mhm.
No, yeah, I didn't take that class to how
Mhm.
to know yourself, and then how
Mhm.
to embrace yourself as well, I think is another piece, and embrace what makes you unique, and then understanding what you need to, really thrive, I think is important.
Mhm.
So Laurel, if people are like, "Okay, I know we did like a high level overview in a
Mhm.
lot of ways, but if they're like, okay, you've got me intrigued. I want to understand myself more. I do want to understand the relationships, and I actually kind of like the way that this um it just made a lot of sense to me as you're explaining that. Where would you suggest people start on
Yeah.
this journey?
Yeah, I mean, there are really great books if you're looking to read more about the Enneagram. I really like the Wisdom of the Enneagram, which is kind of like one of the old classic textbooks on Enneagram. There are a lot of influencers out there doing good Enneagram work. We have a lot of Enneagram content on our website, which is laureltherapy.net/Enneagram. And there's more in-depth descriptions of each type on our site, and also like what it looks like in therapy, since we're a therapy practice. Like
Mhm.
sixes might work on soothing their anxiety and stepping more solidly into their confidence as a leader, right?
I love that. That's on your website? I'm going to check it
Yep.
out, Laurel.
Yeah. And there are plenty of other podcasts about the Enneagram. I just think that it's such a useful tool. First of all, you got to start with yourself, know yourself, work to be the best version of yourself. And once you've done that, then you can really deepen relationships. And I don't just mean romantic. I mean friendships. I mean work relationships. I mean parenting relationships, family, like everything. Because everyone out there has some Enneagram operating system.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Awesome. Well, okay. So if people want to connect with you, would you say go find them at the website, and we'll link it all
Yeah.
up to kind of find
Yeah.
you? Or
Yeah.
is there any other place you want to direct people to come if they have any questions or?
No, well, laureltherapy.net is the website. We also have an Instagram, which is at Laurel Therapy Collective. And we also have a Facebook and a LinkedIn and a YouTube where we've got some
Awesome.
videos of like interesting conversations between therapists and some of our staff talking about things they're passionate about.
Okay. Well, awesome. Well,
Yeah.
y'all go check it out. Well, Laurel, thank you so much for coming on today. Number one, I have deeply appreciated getting to know you through our interactions. And
Mm-hmm.
if y'all don't know this, Laurel even like went and did yoga with me when I was in California
Mm-hmm.
and did all the things. And we had a great time. But I just also appreciate for you diving into understanding not only yourself more, but then really spending your life's work helping then people
Mm-hmm.
not only understand themselves and build that relationship, but also unlock deeper relationships with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you were to give yourself one piece of advice, like for younger you, if you
Mm-hmm.
were to travel back in your little spaceship in time,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter what point in time it is there one piece of advice or just words of encouragement or words of wisdom that you feel like you would
Mm.
impart to yourself?
Well, when I was in high school, I had a teacher say to me, Laurel, it's going to be a lot easier to be yourself at 25 than it is at 15, than it is to be 15. And I think that is true in every decade. It
Mhm.
was easier to be myself at 35 than it was to be myself at 25. I'm looking forward to seeing how much easier it is to be myself at 45.
Yeah.
So I think that being a human is hard.
Mhm.
Relationships are also hard. As rewarding as they are, they're also hard. And I think that, seasons can fluctuate, but as we go through life, ultimately, I think our relationship with ourself gets easier. It gets easier to be self compassionate, unless trauma comes in there and disrupts that. Um, but I think that I was so appreciative of that teacher saying that to me. So I think that's what I would say to myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
So
going
you'd
to
be like,
be
listen,
easier to
listen
be
to what
yourself
she's
in 10
saying.
years.
Listen to
Yeah.
what she's saying.
Mhm.
Y'all gonna
Mhm.
be friends you're gonna be friends with yourself one day. Just give it some
Yeah.
time.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much for coming on today. And look, if you're listening, y'all know that I leave y'all with one thing that I'm thinking about from the awesome guests that like Laurel we just had today. And one of the things that I'm just going to encourage you to do and take with you, I mean, you're probably taking a lot of things, but is really to dive in and nurture that relationship with yourself. Because if you can unlock a deeper relationship with yourself, the possibilities of you unlocking deeper relationships with other people is going to be that much more possible. And so go forth and unlock within. Until next time. That's all for today on Inspiring Possible. If you found a little inspiration today, please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen to leave us a comment and rate us. Also, make sure and link up with me at inspiringpossible.com to get the free Dream It, Write It, Do It workbook. And don't forget to follow us on social media and share this with anyone who needs to be inspired. Remember, if you can believe it, it's possible.